You don't need magic to disappear for a while, because Firestone tires were built for ticking off mile markers. Firestone Destination LE3 tires for 70,000 miles of exploring. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
As a young boy, Jamie Ward learned how to fix cars from his grandfather, who built an automotive business right out of his garage, serving local Cincinnati firefighters. By the age of 15, Ward was a qualified master technician, and when he was in high school and college, he joined the team at Michel Tire Company in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he learned sales and realized he could make a good living in the tire business. In 1995, Ward joined Chip Woods and the team at Tire Discounters as a salesman when the tire business only had 8 stores. Over the years, he worked his way up the ranks and has become an instrumental part of the company's growth. In 2016, he took the helm as president and CEO of the company and continues its growth with 175 stores and counting.
Welcome to Johnny G and Friends. I'm Johnny G, and on today's podcast, we're joined by Jamie Ward, president and CEO of Tire Discounters. Jamie, welcome to the show.
What's going on, Johnny G?
It's a little hot here in the desert today, but other than that, everything's great, Jamie. How about you? Are you in Cincinnati?
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful day, nice and sunny, and we're finally in the spring weather, so we're excited to see everything green again.
Well, you guys deserve it. You guys deserve it. So, Jamie, you've been in this business a long time. What made you decide to get involved with cars and tires and all that stuff?
You know, that's a great question. I never intended to make this my industry that I was going to have a career in. But when I was very young, my parents were divorced, and my grandfather would pick me up from school every day. And he happened to be a Cincinnati firefighter, who a lot of Cincinnati firefighters have a tendency to have a side business with the hours that they work. He was a mechanic, so he was very successful with all of his firefighter buddies, and then it became the police buddies, and everybody else would come to get their vehicles repaired. So from an early start, I remember standing on top of a cinder block. I had the little hand, so I would go down and replace the spark plugs and everything else that went with it. So by the time I was from 10 years old to 15 years old, we grew the business very well. And I was probably equivalent to a master tech at that time from a skill set standpoint. So I had a really great jump start into the industry, and I didn't know any wiser, right? I just thought that was a kind of a cool thing to do, you know, spend time with your grandfather. In 1987, I started as a tire technician, and I was a tire technician for Tony Michel Tire Company that was here in Cincinnati. Great company, a family-owned and operated business. I had the luxury of starting at their very busiest location. And through high school and college, I changed a lot of tires, did a lot of car repairs, and ultimately started working on the counter and was an assistant manager. So I had a lot of experience by the time I was 18, 19, 20 years old, which really helped fuel the foundation of what we're doing today.
That's an awesome story. I love it because you had the tiny hands so you could go in there and change the spark plugs on the bottom. That's great. That's right. You know, I thought I was young at 17, but man, you had 5 years on me already by the time you got going.
That's right.
So, you know, you got your start with Michel Tire. Tony and Roberta, very good friends of mine. In fact, back in 1986, I was heading up Dayton Tire, and they were my largest customer. Or maybe they weren't the largest at 86, but by 87 they were, because of the number one tire stores. Did you ever remember number one tire stores?
Yeah, that was around the same time frame when he did that acquisition. He was pretty proud of that one.
Yeah. Did you know how that all came about?
No, tell me.
So here's a story that's never been told before. So I'm sitting in my office in Akron, Ohio, and Jay Rosenson was our vice chairman, and he had just left a meeting with John Nevin, who was our chairman. And he said, "Kid," they always called me Kid. He said, "Kid, those number one tire stores, there's like 57 of them in like 13 states." He said, "I'm going to shut them down, but I'll give you 1 week to sell them to a tire dealer. And if you can sell them in 1 week, whatever price you agree upon, it's okay with me. If not, I'm shutting them down." I'm like, holy crap, you know. So the next thing I know, I pick up the phone and I call Tony and I said, "Tony," I said, "I got 57 tire stores here. You interested?" He said, "I'm interested, Sean, but I don't have the cash." So I said, "Hold on a second." And I picked up the phone, and this is something that nobody ever knows. This is a silent partner, and Reliable Tire, its original founder was George Simon. always in the wholesale business, loved the retail business, always wanted to be a retailer. So at like 78 years old, I said, Georgie, I said, you want to become a tire retailer? He goes, yes, Johnny boy, what can I do? I said, Tony Michael needs a partner and he needs some cash flow. Well, you want to be a silent partner? He said, put me in. And so that's how Number One Tire Stores went together between George Simon and Tony Michael. And that's how that all happened.
Well, hopefully you got one hell of a commission off of that deal.
Nah, I think I just saved my job for the next week or whatever.
That's
So,
good.
so now you started Tire Discounters when it had what, 8 locations or something?
That's right.
Give our audience a snapshot of your career path through Tire Discounters.
Yeah, sure. So I started at Tire Discounters, I think it was 95. We had 8 locations, and I got to tell you, they weren't the prettiest locations. A lot of them were gas stations that were converted. And what a lot of people don't know is we started our business selling custom wheels and tires. It was a wheel and tire business. And we really were having to deal with a lot of the big competitors at that time. In our space, we had Tony Michael, which ran a great business, great family business. You had a company called Summerall at that time that worked out of Cincinnati.
Yep.
They ultimately sold to AAA years ago. You had, obviously a lot of other competitors, Sears, your NTWs, all the big players. And little old Chip wanted to spin up a business and was very successful, but was very successful on just being scrappy and aggressively going after the business. We were kind of the originators of the out-the-door pricing that was really big, if you recall, in the 90s when a lot of people were trying to copy that plan. But we did out-the-door pricing. And at that time, everyone was charging for valve stems and all the other knick-knack charges.
Right.
Customers didn't like that. So we really built a lot of our growth on word of mouth advertising, and it really took off pretty well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so what was your first store you ran?
Yeah, so I started at store 3, and it was really interesting. I had the opportunity to work at several locations. We weren't opening new locations up at that time. So I had an opportunity to go in stores that may have been struggling. And it was really interesting. I felt like I was super lucky because every store I took over, within a couple short months, I either doubled or tripled sales. So obviously I was doing something right. I didn't know what the heck it was, what it was at the time. I just knew that I was trying to hustle for the customer, take care of your employees, and the rest came into play. So naturally, I kept taking over locations, and then Chip wanted to start growing. And I really found interest in opening new locations. So I had the opportunity to open a lot of the new stores. At one point, I think I opened 60 locations from whatever, 95 to 2005. And it was really exciting times. We were growing as fast as we could build them. We averaged about 2 to 3 stores per year. And with growth comes opportunity. So as I was opening these new locations, we had to hire, we had to train. So I had an opportunity to take almost every single job and responsibility and spin it up. I created our regional manager program, created every single policy and procedures. Really fascinating. But one of the things that really was unique about our business is Chip challenged me early on to make things franchise ready. We had 8 stores when I started, 8 managers doing 8 things completely different. And for us, one of the biggest things, if we were going to grow, we had to systemize our processes. So we had to figure out, first of all, what the best practice was. So we studied, we learned, we watched other folks do what they did, and we wanted to have the best working process. So we're basically a company of best practices over the years, and we feel that we invented a lot of that stuff, but quite honestly, it's the same systems that all the great players are doing. It's the great processes. The key magic, though, is you've got to have a discipline and really going, opening the locations year after year. We basically grew 2 to 3 stores for the first, 20 years of our growth. And then around 2000, I'd say about 2011, we decided to really double down. Things were going great. Our operations were tight, which is really the core fundamental piece. As long as our operations are tight and our same stores are growing, we're going to continue to grow. And around that time, things were cooking well. We decided to really take this thing up a notch. So we started growing around 10 to 15 locations per year, which meant we had to do a lot of things differently. We had to hire true experts in certain fields. We had to spin up a real estate program. We had to spin up a construction program. And we had to systemize all of these things in order for us to accomplish those lofty targets. So up until around 2 or 3 years ago, we were growing at a 10, 15 store clip. And then recently we decided we got such a great thing going. We needed to really grow faster, and for us, we looked at acquisitions for that. We looked at creating partnership opportunities. We've been watching the industry closely. We know it's super fragmented. And the travesties, we've been watching a lot of these really great family-owned and operated businesses sell to some of these private equity companies and some of these companies that are in it just to flip the company in 3 to 5 years and make a profit out of it. Well, for us, we knew there was an opportunity there. So we spun up a franchise program. And that franchise program wasn't a traditional franchise program. This franchise program was more engineered for having conversations with family-owned and operated businesses and seeing how we can help them. Seeing some of the same issues that we were suffering from, we knew some of these smaller retailers had to be struggling pretty significantly with rate wages and inflation, all the other things that we saw coming down the line. So we spun up a program, and it took a while to spin that program up, and we hired some of the best people to help us with that, including a guy you may know, Dave Crawford.
Know Dave real well. Yep. Good friend of mine.
So he came on board, and we started having conversations, and it was pretty interesting. It was interesting the fact that we thought that a handful of those folks would want to sell their business, but most of them would want to be in the franchising model. And it turned out that every single one of them was looking to do some partnership arrangement or sell their company to us. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, it really makes sense because you take a typical mom and pop 1, 2, 3 location type of person, and they're competing with the big boys, and it's getting bigger and bigger. If they can use your advertising and be associated with you, but then when it comes to a time where mama wants to check out and they say, hey, we want to take the chips off the table, they've already got a relationship with you, everything's set up. You transfer over the money. Here's the keys to the store, and I'm heading to Florida or wherever. All right, something like that.
No question about it. And a lot of them, they're like us, family owned and operated, and they operate the same way in a lot of ways, a lot of fashions. So they might have some similar processes, some that aren't too similar. But at the end of the day, they're taking care of their employees and they're taking care of their customers. And it's just been a really, really great matchup.
So I'm assuming that a lot of training, a lot of education has to happen, and there's classes so that everybody is working, like you said, so that you have the uniformity and the disciplines in place with all the different locations. Is that right?
That's right. So for our new store growth, we do a full rigorous training program where we'll bring people in. We have a training center in Cincinnati and now one in the South that will bring people in for a period of time, show them the ropes. From mechanical training to alignment training to tire training. We also do a lot of sales and management training. So we have a ton of that already in motion. When we do partnership arrangements, we like to bring people in, and we also send a lot of people into their stores to work with them side by side to learn their business model. If they have a best practice we want to bring back, great. If there's some things that we can add value to them, we'll make those changes. But over time, we want to systemize everything and get those guys on the same page. And it works really well.
So you got 3 prongs. You got the greenfields that you're putting out there. You've got the franchise program, and then you have whatever acquisitions pop into your lap. And that's how your growth is really expedited. What do you got? 150, 160? I can't keep up with you. How many locations you got?
We're now at 175, and it's hard to keep up with ourselves. People ask me that all the time. So every time I answer it, it's a different answer. Because we have a lot of stores that we're closing on. We have 24 stores over the next 16 weeks that we'll be bringing into the fold. So we've got a lot cooking.
Wow. Well, tell Chip, you and him have done an unbelievable job. And just there's a rare amount of tire dealers that I've known in my 50-year career that have grown like this, and not just grown just to say add locations, but have the uniformity that you put into place. And you're building some gorgeous locations, my friend. Obviously, I spent half my time in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm seeing your locations pop up all over the place.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not easy. From stores 56 probably to stores 110, it was a very, very difficult ride for us. We really had a lot of growth, obviously a lot of stores we were putting together, new markets, new territories. But we also had to build infrastructure out during that time. And you would think it's easy when you add more people. It's actually opposite. You know, if at that time we were looking for best-in-class marketing people, best-in-class legal folks, best-in-class construction managers. The problem with hiring best-in-class in these individual departments, they're not tire people. So
Right.
when they're not tire people, they have no idea how the business operates and how complicated of a business we actually have. And the training, the education that goes with that, it is a humongous undertaking. So I can see why people sell their business when it gets to that range, because it's a lot of horsepower that you've got to invest in order to make it through that growth period.
Yeah, you said those magic words. You got to be a tire person. I mean, there's obviously avenues for good business people, but until you worked in a store, until you had all the pain and suffering of scars and battle stuff to understand some of the things that go together, it kind of brings everything full circle. You know what I mean? Having that experience that you've had, obviously from 10, 12 years old, all the way up until your first job, has developed you to what you have got today, which is just unbelievable. Really, congratulations.
Thanks. It's very difficult, and I can tell you, it's an eye opener or game changer when you bring in an employee or a new folks from, you know, it's called the chief marketing officer. We just added the chief marketing officer, but it's a game changer. We just sent that individual to stores 2 weeks ago to work a store, and the perspective that he had coming out of the store environment, he threw away everything that he was working on and realized, holy cow, we need to start from scratch. There's a lot of different things we got to start doing, you know.
And that's the smartest thing you could do. Put them out in the store, you know, and we had a navigator program, same thing, bring people in, and hey, you can spend 6 months in the store or maybe 6 weeks, depending on the position level, just to understand what they're going through. So it'll make your decision a lot more understanding. Yeah. So you like to say that you're a student of the business. I've heard you say that a couple of times. Please explain that.
Yeah. So, you know, for me, the way we've grown, our culture, it's been continuous improvement. One of the things that a lot of people say to me a lot is, how do you know all this about the industry? How do you know all about, you know, all the pieces of our business? And I had the luxury of doing almost every single job. But the cool thing is going through the ranks, we made a lot of mistakes. And, you know, mistakes is a different word for experience.
Right.
And, Chip demanded early on, he wanted everything franchise ready. I mentioned that earlier. It wasn't about selling to franchises or doing franchises one day. It was about having the same product in Cincinnati as Nashville, as Atlanta, as Florida, as Michigan, wherever we go or wherever we are, that same guest experience has to be the same. And for me, the only way you're going to do that is if you understand what those best practices and you continuously learn through your mistakes and your opportunities. One thing about our industry is it's constantly changing. You have different employees that you have to modify to. You have different customers now that we're selling to or marketing to. We have different cars we're working on, the technology, the ADAS that's going along with windshield replacement or resetting your alignment. It's not as simple as it was back in the day. There's a high degree of technology that's in a lot of these newer vehicles. So you have to be a student of the business to continually be on top of these things so that you can take full advantage of how the business is changing, right? Look at the climate of inflation and everything else that's happening that's completely out of our control. We have to be studying that. We have to be on top of that in order for us to be successful. So for me, I'm constantly asking questions and trying to learn. No matter how much knowledge I have in the industry, I'm always asking to learn more because it's important. And if you ask our teammates, they say the same thing. We're a student of the business. Please tell me more. Tell me more about your business. Help me understand how you're successful. What makes you successful? And we try to apply that logic back to our business.
Well, I can feel it. I can feel a passion in your voice, and you're thirsting for that knowledge. And to have it after all these years, I commend you, man, because that's what it's all about. You got to love this business. And so let me ask you on the contrary, what's the hardest thing to teach others about the business today?
That's an easy answer. So multi-unit is the biggest challenge in our industry. In any industry, really, when you look at restaurants, when you look at any multi-unit business, keeping that consistent product takes an incredible amount of discipline. It takes an incredible amount of process and policy and really execution. You have to have a great team that is monitoring that. You have to set clear expectations. You have to hold people accountable with clear consequences. And it's not an easy job to do. And most don't do it well. If you look in our industry, in our space, there's a lot of companies that get to a certain size and they collapse and they start divesting because they've outgrown their ability to manage the facilities. Multi-unit is a beast. And that's one of our greatest strengths, luckily. Coming through the ranks, I was able to kind of figure out what those best practices are and train our best-in-class team, all those processes. So that's something that we spend a lot of time on. We really focus and hammer down on making sure that guest experience is just right. But it's funny bringing new people into the environment, especially in our home office, where they think they can send a simple email to the stores, and all of a sudden every store will magically change their plan or get on a new program or all of a sudden execute flawlessly. They have no idea that that email is about 5% effective. Then a face-to-face conversation might be a little more effective, maybe like 10% more effective. Then you have a face-to-face or telephone conversation to increase your effectiveness, and you're still not done. You have to have that most important piece, which is the follow-up piece, relentless follow-up to the details to make sure that that execution's right. And not everyone does that. That's why you almost limit your growth by your ability to manage and operate your facilities.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So who were some of your mentors growing up throughout your career, and how did they influence you?
Yeah, so obviously my grandfather, who practically raised me as a kid, he taught me everything about the automotive industry from a repair standpoint. He also taught me the customer service piece, which is phenomenal. Every single Christmas or every single Thanksgiving, there would be people dinging the doorbell around the clock, dropping off his favorite bourbon, favorite whiskey, whatever it might have been, to thank him for the good deeds that he did for them, taking care of that customer. Really, really cool to see that. I had no idea what I was watching other than it was unique, right? And, fast forward, obviously, Chip Wood has been my single biggest mentor. We've worked together for a long time. And when I tell you we learned a lot by mistakes, I was a bit of a cowboy trying new things, which was good for us because we failed a lot. We tried new things. We weren't scared to try new things. And as we failed, we figured out what was the problem? Why did that fail? What are we going to do to fix that so it doesn't reoccur? And so there was an incredible amount of lessons over the years that Chip would have with me. And at the time, I thought they were just him hammering me on a problem that I did or a mistake I made. And, I was in trouble a lot, right? But every single one of those discussions, those coaching moments, I learned a tremendous amount more on how to run our business. And fast forward, it was all training for what I'm doing today. And it's worked out really well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you might have already answered this, but the biggest challenges that you're facing, forget about the uniformity and disciplines you put in place. What's happening with tire dealers out there? What's the biggest challenge? The pandemic has kind of faded now. What's your next challenge around the horizon?
Yeah, so everyone I talk to in our industry, they all say the same thing. It's staffing. But I would say the most important one for us, we've been engineered to grow. So we've got the staffing down. We've got the training down. Our biggest challenge really is stuff that some people think are out of your control, like inflation, supply chain. But for us, we really focus on what we can do in our environment to counteract those pressures. So our management team meets weekly. We talk about different ways to get around those challenges. But wage compression is a big one, right? We see a lot of wages now that we're competing with in a lot of our competitors and other industries where we have to be on top of that. And that costs a lot of money. But we have a really good plan there. We hired a chief people officer someone that used to work for companies like Frisch's or Wendy's International, that really their sole job is to make sure our comp plans are right. And their sole job is to make sure our employees are happy, that they're engaged, that they enjoy what they do. And it's really a role that a lot of people don't have, but it was something important for us to continue to make sure our culture never goes away. Some of the other pressures, inflation's a big one. Everybody's raising prices in every single piece of the business. And it's really something that there's no other thing that we can do other than raise prices ourselves. So you'll see a lot of inflation in our own industry happening because we have to keep raising prices when the manufacturers raise it. But some of the things you can't raise prices on is equipment costs, right? We can't outrun that. We can't raise prices because our uniform costs go up or whatever those increases may be. Fuel costs, they're going up. And these things are really, really difficult to challenge right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So many things that are just said. I wish our government, I'll say our government, that we would put more focus on vocational schools again. You know, back in the 60s and the 70s, it doesn't matter whether you're going to be a mechanic or you're going to be a plumber or electrician. But, you know, this country needs to get back to the roots of vocational education right out of high school. Not everybody needs to go to college, and you know, you can make $100,000 and some by, you know, being in that industry, you know.
There's no question. And you can't hire mechanics right now. It's very difficult. So you have to train your own. Had we had not had our training program, and had we had not had our what we call TD University, where we train technicians every single day in our facilities, if we did not do that, we would be in a really difficult situation.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, my friend, I got to tell you, I've enjoyed our conversation this morning. I want to thank you for being part of Johnny G and Friends, and look forward to hooking up in Nashville. When you're in Nashville, I'll be there for the next 6 months. Let's get together and have dinner together.
We'll stop in soon. Okay, Johnny, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it.
All right, Jamie. Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye.
Take care.
You don't need magic to disappear for a while, because Firestone tires were built for ticking off mile markers. Firestone Destination LE3 tires for 70,000 miles of exploring. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.